"Let me explain what is happening to the Jewish people," the guy said. He had just come out of the lounge and had spilled maybe coffee all over his vest, so recently that it still glittered and beaded on the ugly, puffy fabric of it. He was speaking very loudly over music coming from his headphones, and this did not make him the best spokesperson as to what was happening to the Jewish people. We listened anyway. Lila and I had been Jewish all our lives, and we were very curious about what would happen to us. "They want the money, right?" the guy said. "Let me explain it. They want all the world's money, right?" "Right," we said. I was almost out of money myself, and soon would be chained to a student loan. All the world's money was something I wanted, come to think of it. "And the world's money is down in San Francisco," the guy said. "Or San Fran, as everybody says. I'm going down there myself as sort of a freelance guard. Something terrible is going to happen down there, and the Jews will use it as an excuse. Maybe a building like with terrorists will." The guy plucked his earphones from his ears and dropped them around his neck like one of those stupid pillows people wear on airplanes, and then spread his arms out like he was tossing handfuls of flour. He made a noise like a 10-year-old boy pretending to blow things up, which is always the trouble. It was very pretty to look at, but then again I was drunk. I don't know why Lila was listening, but she has always been kind. "It'll either be guys with bombs or a volcano is my theory," the guy said. From his earphones we could hear an old song sung enthusiastically by the original artist. "You know how I know it?" "I'm guessing a pamphlet you read," I said. "I'm going to go with the internet," Lila said. We turned to see if there'd be a guess from the only other person in the lounge, but the bartender was still cranky at the both of us, and he stacked napkins to show us it was so. "Both of you big-breasted girls are wrong," the guy said. "I did it by reading Birds. They behave badly when disaster is going to strike. You know, like with earthquakes." "Wouldn't an earthquake be more likely," Lila said, "in San Francisco?" "Not in my theory," the guy said proudly. "Well, that's a great theory," Lila said. She made a gesture like she might put her hand on the guy's stainy vest if she weren't all the way across the lounge. "Yeah," I said. "Go tell someone that theory, and they'll interrupt the Super Bowl." "You think I'm hilarious and crazy," the guy said, in that sudden spooky clarity only exhibited by crazy people. He walked backward toward a pair of swinging doors. "I'm just wrecked up. I've been beaten down by the knowledge of all the terrible things happening, and my theory is to tell my fellow man. In San Francisco, my fellow man will see how wrecked I am, and he'll treasure all the time he has before the Jews take over. So you're welcome, even if you don't love me and never will." He put his tunes back on his head and left us there. We shifted in the booth of the lounge, and I raised my finger to the bartender, who brought me another bourbon. "San Francisco," he said, shaking his head. "And I was just going down there to work in my brother's bar with better tips." "We're going to tip you," I said, at the end of our day. The bartender snorted and caressed a blank TV which hung silent near the ceiling. He touched it like he could bring it back to life. "Not like you said," he murmured sadly, and Lila changed the subject. "Everybody has a theory today," she said. "That woman leaving as we came in? She had a blackjack theory, how to win. It also had to do with birds, come to think of it, but they were her own birds in cages." I took a delicious sip. The bourbon was perfect, but then it almost always was. "My theory is," I said, "pay no attention to theories in bars." Lila patted my hand and took a fake sip of water. "You should get a guy like that." "You just like him because he said you have tits," I said. No, Lila shook her head very carefully. "Clean him up and turn off his music, and he's the guy for you." "I always thought you'd do well with a guy who is apocalyptic. It would remind you nothing is the end of the world." "Except when it is," I said, too quietly with my mouth full of drink. I ordered another. She was comforting me, which made me sick. Lila was the sick one, the one who ought to be comforted. This was an old song, too. She was sick and dying, for sure, and a lot of pain. We couldn't drive north enough to escape this. Young people in a deserted bar, drinking as death approaches, and still the men come at us, and still we notice them. The only thing you haven't heard about is how rare she was. Such a rare gastrointestinal thing that the doctors could never hide their excitement when they were called into the room. There had only been 8 previous cases, one of them Lila's mother, who had died helpless, aching and coughing all over, and finally screaming, Lila told me, when Lila was the only visitor left to her. It had been Lila and her mother. Today it was Lila and me. Lila had undergone one operation that had been invented since, and they rerouted part of her intestines or some such shit, and for a while there'd been a cape full of hope, sort of. They thought in a couple years she might be able to eat, and when she farted, the doctors opened a bottle of champagne to celebrate. They poured it in urine sample cups in the hospital room, except she couldn't have any and the doctors were on duty, so I finished the bottle myself and watched her doze in the upright bed. But it's always dawnest before dark. Now she had a beeper clipped to her waist, for when some poor soul with the same blood type stepped in front of a bus and offered up a digestive system. But even this was not the sort of hope one hopes for. This was hope that the operation would work for a few weeks so that the doctors could learn something and maybe fix the next person. Lila herself would be granted more pain in a few months unless she died first. Hope was now hitched to the doctors, who were handsome to a fault and wore leather jackets when I saw them walking in the parking lot. Hope was hitched to them and not to Lila, who rarely got to leave the room. She wasn't supposed to be here, of course, but it depended on how you phrased it. Lila and I had phrased it as, "Can we take a walk around the block and maybe even sit out on the spiky hospital grass?" The nurses were glued to the TV and gave us an absent okay, but instead we got into my car and left Seattle in the belly of a ferry across Puget Sound. It wasn't far, but it was far away, the ferry line the only thread which would lead us back. We drove north past Bainbridge and Kingston in search of the name that always cracked us up, Point No Point. There was a new casino, who knew? Inside it wasn't easy to find a place that didn't have the Super Bowl blaring on the screen. We weren't interested in the year's big football contest. We didn't think those guys needed any more encouragement. It took me waiting for the bartender to slip out for something and taking one of the heavy chairs, lifting it over my head, and banging it against the bottom of the TV over and over until it spat sparks, while Lila stood underneath the green exit sign and watched for his return. If she saw him coming, she was going to give me the password. The password was, "Shit, the bartender's coming." Let us have our fun. By Super Bowl Sunday, there was no one to stop us. Lila's father had died when someone had killed him, and her husband had shot himself long before she even got sick, after a nervous breakdown that left him weeping and playing golf by himself in the rain. It was something else we had in common. She and I were cut from the same cloth, an angry odd quilt, and then she went and got sick just like her mother, and I had to start drinking for both of us. Sick, I would hear myself yelling to the late-night science television. It was the only thing worth watching after visiting hours were done. Why haven't we fixed sick yet? You scientists there, put down those starfish and help us. I hereby demand that all people who are good at math make the world free of illness. The rest of us will write you epic poems and then staple them into a booklet. Then I'd weep, finally, and fall asleep in Adam's sweatshirt and wake up and quit my job. "Tell me a story," she said. "You're thinking about Adam, I can tell." "Then I'll tell you a story about him," I said. Once upon a time it was morning, and the two of us were hung over in Stephen's old apartment on South King. It was when Andrea visited with that boyfriend of hers who turned out to be loopy. "I've heard he's since straightened himself out," she said. "You heard it from me, who's telling this story," I said. "The point is, 5 pitchers of margaritas is plenty. Andrea and what's-his-name were asleep on the couch, and you in your room, and by some miracle I was getting it together to make us a pot of coffee and banana waffles." Lila smiled at the waffles, curling her beautiful lips in fond remembrance of having something to eat. "And," she said. "And bacon," I said, although this wasn't true. Bacon was my gift to her. And there was a knock-knock-knocking on Stephen's door, and behind the door was Adam, without a shirt on and holding his very old shoes. "And so how could you not," Lila said, "take him and kiss him and live with him for 6 years? I mean, no shirt alone would be enough for most girls, Allison, but no shirt and holding old shoes? That's better than a Jewish doctor." "Better than your doctors," I said. I could say this, and not just because it was true. I wasn't the only one who knew where the hope was hitched. Lila dribbled her water into a potted plant above her on a counter, and then held the glass against her cheek like she'd downed a drink. "You know when I stopped with the doctors?" she said. "You know when I gave up on my life and just thought, well, if it makes the docs happy to learn something." It was when that handsome one, except for the pimple under his eye, looked right at me and said, "Binomial nomenclature." She told me this story 1,000 times. 2-word name, I said. "To name," she said. "To look at me dying and waste time with the Latin, and it's not even Latin." Okay, I told him, but he didn't get it, which was another bad sign. "Like a bird behaving badly," I said. She smiled right at me. "Or a chainsaw," she said, "outside the window." Lila and I shared a room in college and spent one night drinking round after round of a 1930s drink recipe called the Suffering Bastard. We were almost out of bitters and brandy when we heard an evil buzzing outside. Boy, oh boy, was it very late. We peered out the window, and 2 boys were standing in the parking lot, holding chainsaws and staring at us. We screamed and called the campus security, who arrived enthusiastically only to find the boys were holding remotes with antennae poking out of them, while miniature sports cars buzzed around the concrete, and that they were staring at us because we had thrown back the curtain and stood there in our underwear screaming at them. Also, we knew these boys, Joe and Joe's friends what's-his-name. Our position was not one of strength, but Lila argued with campus security anyway. "You were fierce," I told her, another bourbon gone. "I was," Lila agreed faintly. "The point, as I saw it, and I still see it this way, is that they were dumb guys and ought to be rounded up, chainsaws or no. I mean, look, it's more than 10 years later and the Super Bowl still exists. Do they honestly think I don't know why there were scarcely any doctors on my floor today?" I looked at her. She was tops. She made me want to have a hero. "Who's your hero, Lila?" I said, hearing my bourbon on the lilt of her name. She gave me the look that would have given me if I were me. This was the last fun night we really had, with the chainsaws. Her mom died 2 months later, and after that, no matter where we drank or what, we were the suffering bastards. "You're my hero," she said, "for driving me here, and for lack of a better guess. Finally getting to point no point is the last thing that makes sense. You know how the nurses started asking me to rate my pain 1 to 10? I just started giving them random numbers. You can't go to 10. I told the one with those earrings I want to yank out. You can't go to 10 because someone might slap you, and that would hurt more. I won't slap you," I said. "Someone put Jewish on the chart," she said, "so they sent in a rabbi who I swear looked pre-bar mitzvah." "They sent you a rabbi?" I said. "You must have been putting money in the meter," Lila said. "He had that rabbi curly hair, and it was the first gig after wherever you go to be a rabbi." I signaled the bartender, who hung up a phone and sulked over without a bottle. "What did he say?" Lila blinked very slowly, which she also did when she was drunk, like the move with her empty water glass. "He said I was a very pretty girl," she said. "He said I was beautiful." "Let's go, girls," the bartender says. "Bar closing." "It's noon or something," I said. "Tony says I can close it up. Super Bowl Sunday, even the Indians aren't drinking. I'm full of hard times today. TV goes on the fritz, and I'm the only man on earth who's in a bar and can't watch the game. I have to call Tony every 5 minutes to know what's going on." "There's no justice in the world," I said. "Yeah, I know," the man said, "but it really bugs me when the game's on." "We don't want to watch the game," Lila said. "We want to talk to each other before I die." "Listen to you with your drama," he said, and walked away from us to reach from behind the bar for a bottle of lotion. "Don't pretend like you like me, okay? When you came in here, you strongly implied that we were going to have a threesome if I gave you a round of drinks. As soon as I did, even though one of you wanted water, you laughed your asses off at me, so shut up with the 'there's no justice.' Justice is you leaving Point No Point Casino Lounge number 6 right now." Lila stood up and tottered, which was a new thing lately and couldn't be good. The bartender frowned and spread his gob of lotion between his hands. "You don't get it," she said. "Let me explain what is happening to the Jewish people. Girls are never going to walk into this place or another place and sleep with you in pairs." She looked at his name tag. "Gus, it's over. Stop with the porn imagination that men tackling each other outdoors. You need to call Tony every 5 minutes for the score? Go score with Tony. If men went out and had sex with each other every time they were angry, there'd be so much less pain in the world." "What the hell?" the man said. "You're crazier than our friend Headphones, and you're not even drinking. What's eating you anyway?" Lila gave him the same smile she gave her husband when he bought the gun. For hunting, he had said. To kill birds. And she unbuttoned her blouse. It was a green silk thing, bad for rain, and it always rained in this part of the world. There was a row of gorgeous outfits hanging in her hospital room closet, ready for the nightlife like a sick joke. Whenever I opened the doors, the hangers would ping and rattle in the breeze, like Lila was dead already, and her ghost was deciding what to wear. "Check it out," she said, unbuttoning further. She wasn't wearing a bra, and had never needed to, although of course she'd worn one for 2 years in junior high until I told her in the soccer field out back as the drizzle spat into our rum that she should just give it up. Beneath the silk was the scar from the last time, snaked between her breasts in a spiral wide and bearing nasty teeth down to her pale belly, in a way that made her navel no more. For some reason they had to spiral it. For some reason this was necessary. I'd seen it 1,000 times, from that day in the waiting lounge when they wouldn't let me in, and I heard her surface from the anesthetic and cry and cry and cry until I pushed through anyway. The waiting lounge felt like a blind date on the 6th floor, with everyone staring and wondering what was wrong with one another, but Adam was gone by then, and Lila's unmentionable husband, and so I was the only one out there for Lila, and she was the only one out there for me. Every time I saw the scar, I thought of what they showed on the TV in the room. Some nurse had turned it on so Lila could have company, while I magazined in the lounge because I wasn't a relative. The TV told a science story of some people who had found a wounded bear in a faraway forest and had used science to trick it back into healthy. Now it traveled with a show and balanced objects on its head. Why wouldn't they leave them alone? Why don't they ever leave them alone? I couldn't believe my eyes, that they would show such a thing on screen, and neither could Gus believe his eyes when he saw it. Without a rude word, he left us, and Lila sat down and pulled her shirt shut. "I have to go to the bathroom," she said, and reached into the rip in her purse. "Do you want me to come with?" I said. Terrible things happened with her in the bathroom, as you might imagine, and I had seen them all. "Just to brush my teeth," she said, taking her toothbrush out. "Bad taste in my mouth." She walked off behind the plants, and I put my head down on the table and cried. When Adam moved in, we bought a globe at a garage sale and would spin it together in bed. I'd stop the world with my finger, and Adam, the drugs racing through his teeth, would tell me things he knew about where my finger landed. Some of them he made up, but most of them he remembered from a grade school teacher of unspeakable power. Still, nothing in this world prepared me. In all the world I couldn't guess this moment or what it looks like, so I thought I'd cry about it for a minute until I heard the bottle set on the table and Lila sit down beside me. "I'll make you a drink, dear," said Lila, but it wasn't Lila. She was older, much older, and vaguely cool, wearing a shawl I might buy if my loans ever let up. Her fingers looked like trees in the park, and she clutched everything at once. Vermouth and Campari and a cocktail shaker and 3 dainty glasses by their stems. "You're the woman on the way in," I said. "We saw you." "I talked to your friend," she agreed, unscrewing the cap of the Vermouth. I told her my blackjack theory. Drink was making this difficult. "Do you work here?" I asked. She made a noise so much like a barnyard hen that I missed Lila's mom all over again, the way she always got pesto on her shirt but never stopped ordering it. "I wouldn't call it working," the woman said. "I'm wasting all my money away. It doesn't pay much. As you well know, it's quiet today, so I stumbled in here and saw you crying like you couldn't go on. So I'm here to serve as an example, and I'm going to make you a drink called an Old Pal, Campari and Vermouth and bourbon like you like, but served up so you look better drinking it, as you well know." I looked at this woman and also saw the bored nurse and Adam and those boys who like to run tiny cars at 4 a.m. It was the usual revelation. Everyone's crazy. "There was another guy in here serving as an example," I said. "He had a theory." "Everybody has a theory," the woman said. She started shaking the shaker, and I could hear that ice was already inside. "This other guy, what did he make you?" "Nervous," I said. Lila was taking a while. I felt the prickle of deciding whether or not to worry, but then she appeared like a miracle and tottered past the plants on our table. "It's a party," the woman said, adding the Campari. "I'm back and so are you," Lila said, putting the toothbrush where it belonged. "This is the blackjack woman, Allison. We talked on the way in about her theory." "As you well know," the woman said, "I have these birds in cages given to me by a dear young man who draws things. He's the sort of boy you girls would like." "I'm done with boys," Lila said, "except Sidney Poitier." "I met him once in my Hollywood days," the woman said. "He's not for you." She turned to me and her eyes looked icicle shiny, sharp and pretty, and not likely to last. "You want my bird friend?" she said. "Sometimes he behaves badly, like his birds, but you would like the likes of him." I was telling Allison she needed someone apocalyptic, Lila said. "Maybe she needs both," the woman said. "An apocalyptic boy who draws." "Even with the right boy, I'd wreck it," I said. "I'd join the Navy on impulse and sail off right when he needed me, or we'd have a baby, and I'd accidentally put it in my purse. The right boys I always toss, and the wrong ones I keep on top of me like paperweights. I know they're the wrong boys, and I just go to them." I balanced my figure on the square of a napkin and moved it down the table like a barge. "I just go," I said. "It's true," Lila said. The talk was cheering her, I could tell. When she first got sick, there was a very popular book about heaven. While she languished in the hospital, I stayed up all night on espresso, taping the word heaven over the word Las Vegas. Everywhere it appeared in the book. Sometimes when I'm alone, I get a warm feeling inside me, and I know my mother's in Las Vegas thinking of me. She was smiling like that now. "What's her name again?" she asked the woman. "How about Gladys?" Gladys said. "Well, Gladys," Lila said, and draped an arm around me. "Allison here once met a boy named Adam. He was all pepped up on drugs when he knocked on the door, desperate for money. 'I need money,' he said. And do you know what Allison did?" "Fed him waffles," I said. "He kept saying I need money, and I told him if he picked up all the leaves in my yard, I'd give him $1. It wasn't even her yard, Lila said. She just wanted to see him bend over." Gladys laughed and slid the old pals over. They looked rosy in the indoor light. "I can't drink," Lila said. "I thought you looked too sick to drink," Gladys said gently. "Never mind, dear. As you well know, a woman looks good with a drink in front of her whether she's drinking it or not. You keep it." She raised her glass to start a toast. "Good times around the corner," she said. "I don't know," I said. "It's a long corner, Gladys. How about confusion to the Gentiles?" That was the toast we learned in 6th grade. Allison was a gloomy Gus then, Lila said. She would wander the halls like a ghost. She had a theory that she would be wearing men's neckties, but it wasn't going over well at Jean Ahern Preparatory School. People would laugh at her, and she would cry at them back. She was a sore thumb. "And what changed the tide?" Gladys asked. I looked at Lila and saw her mother's chin, the crease of her mother's brow when we stayed out past curfew and snuck in the back. It was all that was left of her. For a while in college I was an experimental filmmaker, if that's the word for it. We'd get drunk and rip up pages in the Norton Anthology of Poetry and read them into her dad's video camera in funny voices. There was no point to it, but we loved those movies to tears. They were for a select audience, but then again, we were the chosen people. What would happen to us? What would happen? "It was when I met you," I said to her. "It all changed then." "Birds of a feather," Lila said, and took my hand. Gladys slipped her drink. "And what happened to your boy who wanted money?" she asked me. "Did he change too?" "He was a mistake," Lila said quickly. "He was," I said, but this didn't help, or the drink I finished. It's one thing to forgive yourself for a mistake, but if you knew it was a mistake at the time, how do you forgive yourself then? The boy Adam had left a spiral scar as he tripped through my life, but you'd expect a clumsy passage from someone showed up carrying his shoes. I looked at Lila, who couldn't drink for what was in front of her. I thought we wouldn't have times like this, me drunk and her sober, until she was pregnant and a boy was gone for my life. But instead she was sick, and he was gone for my life. He's dead, I said. He's nothing, Lila corrected me. He's less than nothing. You can't be less than nothing, I said. Thank God. He killed himself without caring for me. He shed me like skin. I heard the talk. You can be talking, just talk, and you wish you were conveying something at the same time, but you're not. How could you be? He said he felt happy whenever he looked into my eyes, I said, but he scarcely ever did. I said I'd hold him all night and make sure nothing happened to him, and sure enough, nothing did. I thought I'd keep him because everybody should have a true love you can't be with, but he lay in the bathtub and got gone, all guilty over something I didn't even know about. 6 years. I thought I'd be doing this with Lila when she was pregnant, not sick. Point no point, we always said. Point no point or bust someday. I stood up and rested my hand on the wrecked TV for peace and quiet. The ceilings were mirrored, with cameras behind them, probably to keep all the money safe, and still I didn't have any. How dare he admit there's no point, I said, and sat down again to drink Lila's old pal. There's no point to drinking either, but look, I'm doing it. Gladys didn't look surprised. She finished her drink too and gave me an otherworldly sigh. And you'll die too, she said to Lila. When is that, dear? Lila gave her smile again, the gorgeous one. You're not supposed to ask me that, she said. A month maybe, unless this beeper goes off, and then there'll be another operation and one more month. And then Allison will go to grad school without me and study poetry. She has her loans, she's all set to go, we just have to wait me out. Poetry, Gladys said. You're wasting money quicker than blackjack. In high school it was Wallace Stevens instead of Sidney Poitier, Lila said. You know that poem about the different ways to look at a bird? She knew them all by heart. How many was it, Allison? 13, I said. O thin men of Haddam, why do you imagine golden birds? Do you not see how the blackbird walks around the feet of the woman about you? Lila took my hand and squeezed the thumbnail until it showed a white blob. A ghost, she taught me the day we met on Stairwell B. A ghost in your fingernail. Are you ladies hungry? Gladys said. I can't eat, Lila said. Don't drink, don't smoke? What do you do? Gladys said, a song from prep school days. If you could eat, dear, what would you for a wish? Cake, we both said. It was her favorite forever. You don't say, she said, chuckling. She reached under her shawl and brought cake to the Point No Point Casino Lounge number 6. It was a small piece on a paper plate, covered in clear plastic like a birthday leftover. This woman was a prophetess. A bite won't kill you, she said to Lila. No quicker, anyway. Lila tore the plastic off and licked a bit of icing from her finger. Any other wishes you can grant, Gladys? She asked. Gladys reached down to Lila's waist and pointed to the beeper. You won't believe me, she said, but I can make this go off and extend your life if the operation works. Bullshit, I said. I made the cake, Gladys said. I made you a drink, as you well know. That's no less a miracle. You want to live longer, Lila? It won't be fun, but it seems like you girls could use the time. You're crazy and I wish you would stop, I said. I don't think so, Gladys said. I don't think you're ready for it to stop. Lila looked at Gladys and me and then the cake. It felt like waiting for Adam to say it back. Those quiet times when all of a sudden nothing's a joke. We'd had those moments before, usually in bars. This was like all of them. Yes, Lila said finally. But can you really? There's only one way to find out, Gladys said, and stood up. No, what am I talking about? There are lots of ways. It's a gamble. It was a gamble to come here, Lila said. What are the odds? Gladys didn't answer, or maybe we didn't hear it. Not over the beeper. It was working. It was beeping. Oh my God, Lila said quietly. I have to call the hospital if this is real. I have to call in and see. Phone around the corner, Gladys pointed. I'll go with you, I said. She tottered up and leaned against me, staring at the old woman at our table, and I felt a warm rush those cocktails couldn't touch. It was love, not that I didn't know. We left the lounge and never saw Gladys again. It could be a malfunction, I knew, but that's always the case. Lila tossed coins into the phone, which sat near the slot machines, because the world doesn't care how exactly they get your money. I watched Lila talk to someone like she'd shown her scar to Gus, and loved her way up north. This is love, to sit with someone you've known forever in a place you've been meaning to go, and watching as their life happens to them, until you stand up and it's time to go. You don't care about yours. Why should it change, the love you feel, no matter how death goes? She smiled at me and stuck her thumb up and hung up on the guy at the other end of the line. They were real mad at you, she said with a grin. It's real, though. We can catch the last ferry, and I can be in tremendous pain by tomorrow afternoon. Then what are we waiting for, I said. Do you think Gladys, Lila said, is some sort of... She said she was here to serve as an example, I said. I promise I'll do a thorough investigation while you're under anesthetic, Lila. Only please, let's go, let's go, let's go. Listen to you, she said, and led the way. You're too drunk to drive. She clapped her hands like she used to do every birthday when the candles arrived in a halo of light, and her dwindling friends sang the same old song. I haven't been behind the wheel in forever. Hooray! Hooray. We were outside in the weird afternoon, damp and hard to breathe in. Some seagulls from some place were eating fried chicken that the casino had thrown away, and up near the spiraling clouds I saw some other kind of bird flap against the wind, only to go the opposite direction. Lila took the keys. "Come on," she cried, "come with me." The same album was on, of course, from the giddy ride up, and I drummed my fingers against the window as Lila threw us into gear. "You don't know what it's like," said the singer, who had probably done worse things than wrap Adam's seeping wrists with towels left over from Lila's mother. "You don't know what it's like to love somebody the way I love you." The original artists were a bunch of grinning white men, but the version Lila and I listened to was by a woman who made the whole thing fierce and wise. I turned it up and let it speak. I'd spent my life driving around my city with Lila while the pop music told us what was happening and what it was like, and never wished I was doing anything else. We merged to the bigger road and flew south, the winter weather getting crankier around us as we sang the song together. "You don't know what it's like to love somebody the way I love you." And we retraced our woodsy steps down the only road back. We filled up the car without paying in Bainbridge, which is getting harder and harder to do. The gullible men hunt into extinction, or maybe hiding in difficult parts of the globe. Lila spun the wheel around each corner as the album ended again, but even this turned out to be a wrong dream. The girls don't win on Super Bowl Sunday, no matter how the game goes. The Jewish people are not islanders, except Manhattan and its many bridges of escape, its secret underground railroads, and its taxis that must take you anywhere you want by law. We prefer the mainland, as we have never been able to leave someplace easily. We linger in the entryway at the end of my parents' dinner parties, and we clutter up the aisles of the synagogue, and the bribes at the border don't work, and we end up surrendering our shoes and boarding the train. No one has fixed this plague thrown down upon us, and when we turned the last corner, Lila threw on the brakes for the massive traffic stopped on the road to the ferry. All the red lights of automobiles stretched out like a holiday I didn't celebrate. "What's going on?" I called over to the guy in the rusty sedan. He rolled his windows down too. "There's no way across," he said. "The last ferry's cancelled, is what I heard anyway. I'm trying to hear it on the radio. It's an emergency, I guess, but nobody knows what to do." "There must be somebody who knows," I said. I got up out of the car with bourbon bravado and gave Lila a thumbs up. "Come back," she said. "The ticket booth guy," I said, pointing down to the red light district. "He'll know something. I'm going to walk there and see." "I mean," Lila said and wiped at her eyes without knowing it, "I mean come back after that. Don't fall in love with the ticket guy and leave me here in the car." There was a noise above us like an airplane zoom, but it was getting too dark to see. People started laying on the horn, braying like bad geese in a panic. "I am here," Lila said with a trembly smile. Our driver's ed teacher had told us that's what the horn should mean. Not "move along, buddy," or "I am displeased," but "I am here, I am here, I am here, I am here." "I will come back," I said to her, shut the door, and ran down the asphalt to the booth where they took your money. A woman in sweaty overalls was already arguing with the guy. His name tag said Thomas, but he'd cross out the H in the ink. Behind him I could see what he brought to work, a cup of coffee and a tattered black sketchbook, and he smoked, and on a grimy counter was a TV with its back to me. I heard the dim sound of a crowd. He was watching the game. "I'm telling you I can't tell you like I said," he told Overalls. "How can I get back to the city if there's no ferry tonight?" she said. "I'm a florist. I have flowers in the back." There was a loud horn blast, and we all turned around to see who was there. First in the line at the booth, its bumper growling at the roadblock, was a station wagon, but through the windows all I could see were stacks and stacks of newspapers, yellowing now and yellowing more with every passing moment. "Couldn't anybody do anything right?" "There must be a way," I said. "That's what I keep saying," said the other woman. "If the ferry's broken, there are other boats, like a charter. Only if you have a lot of money," the guy said, "and maybe not then. Look, I don't know anything." There was another roar above us, and we looked up and waited. They told me to let no one through and that there would be more information on the radio. "Will you please go back and sit in your car?" "I have a friend," I said, "who will have an operation tonight." Even the other woman looked at me funny. I've heard every emergency," the guy said. "Every single person in this traffic is urgent." The TV squawked and the guy looked. "These guys are really taking a beating," an announcer said. He sounded more panicked than usual, maybe. "I've never seen this kind of thing from the Magpies." "Shit," the guy said and waved us back. "Please, lady, it's an emergency catastrophe. Go back and sit down and soon we'll all know." "You could at least tell us something helpful," said the overalls woman, and looked at me to see if I was on her team. I shook my head and walked back, the liquor fading with every step. Again there was the roar above me, but why notice the thunder when it only turns out to be rain? There wasn't anything helpful to tell us. It was raining and it was going to rain. Everybody was honking so loudly I had to get back in the passenger seat to tell Lila I didn't know. But she'd ejected the album and was fiddling with my radio, which was almost always not working much. "Tell me something," she said, and winced towards her belly. She undid the seatbelt, took a deep breath, and faced me. "There's no football team called the Magpies, is there?" I don't know. There's the Eagles and some Orioles, I think, and the anti-Semites, but I don't know. Lila winced again and then looked out the wet window, because the radio said something. Holy motherfucking shit, the radio said suddenly, and then disappeared into a depth of static. I think something is happening, Lila said. She gave me a grim smile I hadn't seen in months, a smile of trying to be brave. I don't think I'm going to make it. What did the guy say? He didn't know, I said, but he couldn't spell his own name either. No one can spell my name, Lila said. It's a 4-letter word. Don't leave again. With all this traffic, you'll never find out. I'll never stop, and I don't want to sit here without you. She opened the door briefly to the loud of the rain and the car, and she spat onto the ground, a white glob of her bite of cake. It's the end, the radio shouted again, and I turned it off and reached across her to shut the door, so at least we could be quieter a little. Emergency or football, I wasn't sure, and Lila didn't seem up for either. They said this was my only chance, Lila said quietly. In the lounge, maybe it was worth it, to sit free at point rather than linger someplace to teach something to doctors. But now in the traffic, we couldn't bear for anything to end here, not a single thing. You won't die in this car, I said. It's not like that anyway. We need to get you back, that's all. There's a way. We'll find it. I'll find it while you sit tight. No, she said. The window's only open a few hours, is what they said. If I don't get there, they can't do the operation, and that guy will be dead for nothing. Listen to me, I said, and I felt the fury in my throat. The weight of the world isn't worth it, not even with the love which will die and go away, but each moment with Lila was worth everything. To talk to someone I'd known forever like an old song. Listen to it, love was all we had left, all of us, as we sat beaten down with the knowledge that there wasn't a boat for the rescue. They don't know anything, I said. Those guys, they think a leather jacket looks good zippered up all the way. A few-hour window? If you hadn't come to Stairwell B, I'd be crying there still, and if we hadn't left our keys on the top of the jukebox, the ambulance would have pulled him out of the bathtub alive, and then I would have married him like an idiot, and lost touch because you hated him. I would have lost touch with you in a few-hour window. What were the odds? We can do this. That guy's dead for nothing anyway. All the deaths are dead for nothing, but you're not dead at all. You're drunk, she said, crying very hard. I wish I could get drunk with you again, but there's no way across. We can dream up a better time for you to die than stuck in traffic, I said. No, she said, not if I can't get to sleep. Then we'll stay up all night, I said. You'll stay up all night with me. We've done it before, lots of times. I love you so soundly, and I will do anything to drag you forward. You're mine, Lila. You're my star quarterback. I fucking hate football, Lila sobbed. Blow up the game for me when I'm gone. I won't do a thing, I said. Without you, I'm not moving. Through the front window was another cliché, rain raging while the women inside wept like girls. The traffic screamed its emergency around us, but we could do this thing on our own. She was all the world's money, and I would spend it with her. My sharpest friend who changed the tide, my only comfort from the brutal gamble of the world and the wicked ways of men. I grabbed her hands and clasped them together over her scar into a position of strength, like a prayer we wouldn't be caught dead saying. Gather around us, heroic woman of Haddam. Gather around us and pull us under your silken wings. We are here, we are here, we are here. Won't someone take us across the sound together?